Okay guys, thank you for your patience. Welcome to the March edition of the Global Water Institute's Water Issues Commentary Series. I just want to begin by paying respects to the festival people and respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Today it's really great to have Megan McLeod here from the Alliance for Water Stewardship. Megan had a tour of Manleyvale yesterday. The Alliance for Water Stewardship helps organisations where water is not core business basically understand their role and the impact that they have on their water resources and management in a sustainable way. Michael Spencer, who was a member of our International Advisory Committee, was the past CEO of the Asia Pacific for the Alliance for Water Stewardship. So Megan's a hydrogeologist by training from Flinders University, but has been working with the Alliance for Water Stewardship for a number of years now. In fact, in 2014, Megan was the one that developed their standards that a whole range of companies, Patagonia, Nestle, and different organisations use to understand where they're taking water from, how to do that sustainably, and any impacts on discharges back to the environment are managed. And the standards, I think, were developed in 2014, and Megan was also involved in the updating of those standards in 2018. And so she's the director of their projects for the Asia Pacific region, and will talk to us all about their program. So please join me in welcoming Megan.
Thanks very much, Greg. Thank you for inviting me to come and present today, and thanks for Lisa and her assistance in getting me here and setting me up. I'd also like to join you in acknowledging the traditional owners and stewards of this land and waters, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And thank you all very much for being here and joining me in this presentation also. I must preface my presentation with reference to my colleague, Michael Spencer, my former colleague, Michael Spencer, whose research over the last few years and recent presentation, Drowning with an Elephant in the Pool, Water Industry Attitudes and Neglect of Behavioural Solutions, limit our ability to address escalating water challenges, which provides a detailed background and a real academic basis for water stewardship and for my presentation. I'll briefly recap on some of Michael's points for context, but I'd really recommend you go and check out Michael's presentation, which is available through the GWI website and YouTube channel. The world is facing a water crisis. Water is a precious resource and one of the greatest global risks to economic progress, poverty eradication, peace and security, and sustainable development. An inclusive approach will be necessary, drawing in sectors such as agriculture and leaders such as city mayors and CEOs. New partnerships and ways of working will be crucial. Governments, communities, the private sector and researchers will need to collaborate. The International Decade for Action, Water for Sustainable Development, commences on March 22, 2018. We ask you to join us in committing to valuing water and taking action to address our water challenges within this decade. Whoever you are, whatever you do, wherever you live, we all have a shared responsibility to change the future of water. These are compelling words from the UN High-Level Panel on Water in their open letter and report to global leaders, but only as recently as 2018. While recent, it's nothing new. The World Economic Forum has been reporting on water, on global risks, and have reported water crises among the top five global risks for each year for the past 10 years. Way before that, leaders have been talking about the need to address behaviour and attitudes, participatory approaches involving all users, planners, going as far back as Brundtland's World Commission on Environment and Development in 1987, the Earth Summit and the Dublin Summit in 2000 and 1992, right through the Millennium Development Goals and into the Sustainable Development Goals in this decade. The point of all this is that we have been calling on a collaborative approach and engaging industry in water resource management and sustainable water management for a long time. So it was in this context in 2008 that the idea of water stewardship was conceived, and the Alliance for Water Stewardship was formed, which is a global multi-stakeholder alliance of business, society and public sector organisations. Australia was in the grips of the Millennium Drought at this time. The CEO Water Mandate had been launched. The Pacific Institute had been working on business risks and response, and the Nature Conservancy had been looking at a water certification system for industry around the Great Lakes in the US. Worldwide, organisations were looking for a way for industry to engage and to engage industry in sustainable water management. So this multi-stakeholder alliance formed a multi-stakeholder technical development committee from all regions in the world and from each of those sectors, with representatives from each of those sectors: business, civil society and government. And they set about a 4-year standard development program, which eventually led to the launch of the International Water Stewardship Standard in 2014. The standard is a globally applicable framework with a definition for water stewardship. That is, water stewardship is the use of water that is socially and culturally equitable, environmentally sustainable and economically beneficial, achieved through a stakeholder inclusive process that involves site and catchment-based actions. And then it lays out a process for how to achieve this. Originally in version 1 of the standard, the process was a 6-step process, but through the 5-year review process that the standard undergoes in perpetuity, it has been refined to this 5-step process. That is, gather and understand water-related data about the site and the catchment to understand the shared water challenges and opportunities that businesses and communities are facing within your catchment context. Step 2, using that information and that understanding, step 2 is to commit and to develop a plan for action on improving the status of water in the catchment. Step 3 is to implement the plan. Step 4, evaluate the plan. 5, communicate and disclose the water stewardship efforts at the site and the impacts at a catchment level. To drill down in a little bit more detail, particularly on step 1, which is the key part of water stewardship, it guides sites and any catchment in the world to understand their context, their catchment conditions and the shared challenges. It's to ensure the site's understanding of those issues reflects stakeholder interests and issues and priorities. There is a really strong stakeholder engagement element throughout the standard, which is all about driving transparency and inclusiveness and informed decision making. And using that and understanding your site's role in the problem and the solutions. All of this information feeds into a site-specific water stewardship plan, how the site can influence change and improvements in their own operations and at a catchment level. None of that is particularly revolutionary. It's modelled on a Plan, Do, Check, Act management system, which is used in ISO and other management systems around the world. What was lacking in the development of this was one that really targeted water and understood or allowed for the nuances and the complexities associated with water and within the catchment context. The theory of change behind water stewardship and the standard is that if you have a critical mass of sites implementing and engaged in water stewardship, that will impact on achieve these outcomes at a catchment level, and that is good water governance, sustainable water balance, good water quality status, important water-related areas, and safe water sanitation and hygiene for all. Again, in the first iteration of the standard, there were just the first 4 outcomes associated with water stewardship. But through the multi-stakeholder process and governance that is the Alliance for Water Stewardship and the review process, feedback was received that safe water sanitation or WASH really needed to be added as an additional outcome for where water stewardship was being taken up, particularly in developing contexts, to really focus sites and business interests and action on that outcome as well. So the water stewardship, this system was never developed as a silver bullet or as a way of replacing traditional or our main ways of managing water, which are regulatory and technical. It is a way to reinforce and to support those management methods, both of which, regulatory and engineering, have their obvious constraints and problems. With regulation, there are major compliance monitoring and implementation of regulation, and with technological solutions, often the solution can be someone else's problem, or there's problems with maintenance. And so water stewardship is a way to see the problem from all dimensions, making sure you're getting the perspectives of all interested stakeholders, but it also has a continual improvement aspect to it, which is in the process of the standard, which is at least annually. And there's a transparency aspect to it. It's proactive engagement and reporting on your performance to relevant stakeholders, whether they be regulatory or community stakeholders. I'll just go back to this, I skipped over it. It also supports the concept of integrated water resource management, which has been the main theory and practice for water management, at least at a governance level, since the Global Water Partnership released that in 2000. Does anyone here study integrated water resource management? Yeah. So it's a governance. It's mostly a top-down approach to water management and taught for a governance level. But water stewardship is a bottom-up and supports bottom-up integrated water resource management from a site and engineering level. So that's the theory behind water stewardship. And finally, there is the standard, and water stewardship complies with a global standard-setting organisation for sustainability standards, and that is the ISIL Alliance. And it's really about driving those credibility principles in sustainable development, transparency, efficiency, engagement, continual improvement. And so we have, the Water Stewardship Standard has its own standard that it complies to drive real sustainable and impact. So the theory is all well and good, but in practice, is water stewardship just something that's nice to do, or are there other real business drivers and business cases for doing water stewardship? It, like water, is very context specific. It depends on your industry and your location and how you use water. But broadly speaking, there are always usually the aim of efficiency gains, whether that's in the amount of water used, the wastewater produced. It's to increase risk mitigation or improve risk mitigation. Sites face physical risks, whether that's limited access to water during drought, floods, and it helps sites to understand better their water-related risks. It provides a common approach for understanding risks and performance across business, particularly in the case of businesses that have sites in different countries, different locations. It can be applied in each of those contexts and drive and address the challenges that are specific to those sites, but it allows the business managers to a common approach to assess that and to monitor and manage that. For example, Apple are rolling out water stewardship to all of their microelectronic suppliers in China. Each would have different issues and constraints around regulatory compliance and different uses and sources of water. But through the water stewardship framework, it allows them to report in a coordinated approach and a coordinated way, and for supply chain managers and business managers to monitor risks and performance across those different regions and across different sectors. If you are a supply chain manager looking across your whole of supply chain, perhaps from in a cotton shirt, from your grower to the mill to your retailer. Those are real tangible benefits of water stewardship that drive the business case for it. There are others that we have that have been demonstrated through water stewardship that are less tangible, and including growth in staff capacity and motivation. It is a practical framework that can be used by people that don't necessarily have to be water trained and water professionals. It's a common sense approach, and there are cases where sites are implementing water stewardship themselves without the support of consultants or others. And so they grow their in-house staff capacity, and that has also increased motivation. Motivation in the people who are managing water stewardship themselves, they support it, but also in communicating water stewardship to their whole of staff and how the business is taking action to be sustainable within their business. It gets a site to look beyond its site boundaries, and which strengthens stakeholder relationships. I'll give you some examples of that one coming up, which in turn builds community trust. And provides a framework for collective action. So while it asks a site to implement actions at a site to improve water performance, that can be done in a collective way to reduce the particular cost burden or other burdens on the site for doing so. If you think back to the catchment context, if you've got lots of industry within the one catchment doing water stewardship, it provides the basis for them to collaborate and to look at collective solutions to their problems. And it is a framework for action against the SDGs. It's been recognised in the SDG toolbox as a tool for action, and businesses are certainly interested in taking action for the Sustainable Development Goals. Looking at practical implementations and examples of water stewardship, the Renmark Irrigation Trust in South Australia, they supply water to 4,500 or so irrigating farmers, mostly horticultural, grapes, almonds and citrus and stone fruits. And the Renmark Irrigation Trust are the water supplier. They take water directly from the Murray River and deliver it to the farm gate. Over their hundreds or so years of operation, the Renmark Irrigation Trust have invested in infrastructure upgrades, from channel to piped infrastructure, to improve water efficiency in their delivery. That is both to support their business, but also understanding the constraints of the Murray-Darling Basin and the river. And they have a history that they have continually done that voluntarily over the period of time, to the point where they're now at 98% delivery efficiency. What that has done in their regulatory and in their context is, with the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, while they can show that they are at best performance in that instance, they're not being recognised or rewarded for having invested in that and got to that point of being at best practice. Many of the water efficiency programs and grant programs that have been rolled out associated with the Murray-Darling Basin Plan to get back water for the environment is for big infrastructure upgrades, raising dam walls to improve the efficiency of dams on site, with half the water going to the farmers, half the water going back to the environment. And because the Renmark Irrigation Trusts are already at that practice, they've basically been excluded from any financial assistance or recognition or reward for what they've done. And so through water stewardship, they decided that they needed a way to differentiate themselves and communicate and seek recognition elsewhere for their performance, but also to set the example for other operations within the basin for improvement. They're not saying that all irrigation trusts in the basin should implement piped infrastructure. It's not what they're saying. What they're saying is, or demonstrating, that as a site you can set a baseline level and you can recognise what the challenges are in your catchment, and you can demonstrate improvement against towards the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. Also associated with water stewardship, it's not just about water balance and water efficiency, but it's about good water governance and environments and ecosystems, And they have partnered voluntarily with the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder to use their infrastructure to deliver water to the wetlands surrounding the town that have been cut off historically from the river due to irrigation development. And now they're trying to find solutions, or at least ways that they can beneficially affect change and improvements in other aspects of the environment. And so through this partnership, the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder provides the water, and the Renmark Irrigation Trust uses their infrastructure to deliver that water to the wetlands. And monitoring, the Murray-Darling Basin Authority has reported year-on-year growth in tourism to the region as a direct result of eco-tourism associated with those sorts of programs and that wetland improvement program, which has provided a mutual benefit to the community, provides a mutual benefit to the government in their environmental watering program, and it benefits the Renmark Irrigation Trust both from their stakeholder relations and community relations, but also in that it flushes their pipes, which helps with their infrastructure use and performance. And further, they've also partnered with the local council and other stakeholders in the region for their vision for a local government and community, and in the Sea Renmark 2040, and they sit on the committee, and they sit on quite a few committees for their community and are a real leader. On quite a different industry and example and context, Ingham's, a major poultry producer around Australia and New Zealand. Their Somerville site in Victoria, on the Western Port in Victoria, was the second site in the world to be water stewardship certified. But they had been heavily involved in the demonstration of and trial of the water stewardship standard as it had been developed. They, in the height of the Millennium Drought, were named and printed on the front page of the Age newspaper as one of the top 10 water users in the state, and faced large public backlash for their water consumption during that time. So they were looking away for one to reduce their physical risks in reducing their reliance on potable water supply because they couldn't be guaranteed water in the next 6 months, but also to manage their public relations and government relationships as well. So through water stewardship, that helped them frame their thinking around what are the potential solutions that we can take, or steps we can take to address all of these challenges at our site. And they installed an advanced wastewater treatment plant. Now, don't get me wrong, I have no doubt that that's a technical solution that they would have come to anyway. It's the one that helps secures their water supply the best while reducing their wastewater as well. And as such a major part of their business, I have no doubt they would have come to that solution anyway. But with water stewardship, what it allowed them to do was they engaged with the water supplier in that process, and the South East Water now, and they proactively now report back to South East Water and have such strong relations with them that South East Water are no longer knocking at their door constantly asking to see their information and their data. They've really built strong trust with the regulators that they can carry on their business without much interruption by being transparent and open about their performance. What it also did was it did make them look at solutions and ways that they could help improve other aspects such as water quality in the catchment and environment in the catchment. Watson Creek that runs past the northern part of the site there, the site doesn't actually discharge any water whatsoever into the creek. But given its location and its site footprint and the size of the plant, it's the major employer on the Western Port. There were community perceptions that it was impacting on water quality in the creek, and the creek had previously been said to be the dirtiest creek in Victoria, and it flows directly out into a marine national park. So there's a lot of community interest and there are a lot of stakeholder interest in water quality in the catchment. And so while the site doesn't directly impact that water quality, through their engagement with stakeholders, they applied for and were successful for a grant from Melbourne Water, who are the waterway managers, to really rehabilitate a drain, which you can't see, it just runs off this side of the grassed area there. And then that directly flows into the creek, having water quality improvements associated with that. So it's not directly related to their business, but it didn't cost them anything either. Through that engagement, they successfully got the grant to undertake that improvement, and along with that became those added reputational and stakeholder relationship benefits. I might pause there and ask if anyone has any questions at this time, as the case studies can be quite interesting. The plant, as in how 15,000 a week? Yeah. The Queensland one is bigger. And so Inghams have gone on, they've implemented water stewardship at all of their plants. Their Queensland site at Murarrie, they also have a advanced wastewater treatment plant, so they have quite good relationships with the water manager there, but they're doing some really great community engagement with the local Indigenous community to use their abandoned ponds on site to raise native fish stocks, and also partnering with schools in education programs. And now they're going on to look at how water moves around the site and whether they can generate energy off that. Because also with water, and especially wastewater treatment, there are definite energy trade-offs associated with that, which the water stewardship process all helps you to look into, to develop the cost-benefit analysis for the actions that you take. In South Australia, at Bolivar, their site is very constrained. They don't have the opportunity to develop that, to install an advanced wastewater treatment plant. They don't have green spaces to run or to improve the environment on site. But what they have done is installed a very sophisticated monitoring system for their water intake and water discharge, and their trade waste quality monitoring, and connects directly to the regulators. So the regulators have a real-time monitoring of what's happening at Bolivar, their Bolivar site, which is one of the major industries in that location. And they've done that voluntarily. Again, they were often inspected and checked up on by the regulators, and now by providing that voluntarily and transparently, that's reduced their compliance burden, both from a site level and it's helping the regulators as well, so the regulators can focus their efforts where it's most needed. Going back to the theory of change behind water stewardship and how we're going to achieve real impact, and that's only going to be at scale. So we need lots of sites that are implementing water stewardship plans, and ideally in a collective way. So the Western Port Biosphere Reserve Foundation, they have a water stewardship officer and who is engaging all kinds of sites in the Western Port catchment. It's a peri-urban area, and there's anything from Ingham's to BlueScope Steel to Tree Growers Australia to small farms, organic farms, schools, and there are now about 30 sites in the Western Port that have water stewardship plans and are updating those plans annually, and all mostly working towards improved water quality in the catchment, especially in the Western Port and the marine reserve there, but that all have those good relationships with regulators so that if there's emergencies, there can be a coordinated response as well. Renmark Irrigation Trust is also engaging their 4,500 farmers in the region. They're quite small farms, and given the highly regulated nature of irrigation in the Murray-Darling Basin, all of them are compliant with their water licensing, and at the regional scale, the Renmark Irrigation Trust is managing or contributing to a lot of the improvements in the region. So at a farm level, it's quite simple, basic farm management that is the focus for them, and that's obviously in chemical and water quality management, but also just legal compliance and being transparent about their water usage. Again, reducing the compliance burden for the regulator across the Murray-Darling Basin, where I'm sure many of you know there are real compliance issues. But what they're hoping to achieve for their farmers from that is a group certification and recognition for their growers, and then their growers can use that certification to go to market and improve their brand recognition globally through the Global Water Stewardship certification program. So that's some background and demonstration of water stewardship, but why am I here today? Particularly to talk to you as tertiary educators and researchers and potential future water professionals. Universities are in their own right a major water user and a big player in a catchment, and so they have the opportunity to have an impact within their own catchment and within their own operations. But what I really want to press is that universities are best placed to equip future water professionals to apply water stewardship in their work, whether in consulting, whether you're working with industry on advanced wastewater treatment plants, on dams, in engineering, whether you're working for utilities and working with customers. In your water profession, universities, we want you and universities to apply water stewardship so that we can achieve real impact at scale. And then who knows where we can get to, what we can achieve. As an example, the University of Milwaukee is part of a catchment program, and they're looking at a whole of landscape, a whole of catchment scale water stewardship collaborative program. Well, they're already doing it, but it's ongoing, and the university is a major driver of that. But they're also delivering or have developed a water stewardship master's program as an elective for their master's program, and there's a professional credentialing attached to that program, so that those graduates can, and those credentialed professionals can promote themselves as water stewardship professionals and take this to their clients and into their future work. That's mostly it from me, but I'm really happy to take any questions and discuss further if anyone